Emma Saunders, her daughter Abigail and son-in-law Thomas traded at a food market in a small village. With great optimism, they participated in the process of building the country's economy. These successful traders lived and worked together. It should be noted that Emma Saunders was always fascinated by her daughter, whom she considered not particularly outstanding, even somewhat mediocre. Her surprise was evident when Abigail brought into their family a handsome man named Thomas, who was almost 2 meters tall. At the time, Thomas had seemed to Emma a woman who knew a lot about men, rather modest and well-mannered, but he had the kind of attractive facial features that made him a dream for many women. This combination of qualities impressed her far more than a large and overly brash man. "Tommy, why did you decide to settle here?" There was genuine curiosity in Emma's voice. Emma was genuinely curious as to why such an impressive man had moved from the regional center to their small village, where there was hardly any work. "You know, big city life doesn't really interest me," Thomas said, lowering his head awkwardly. He didn't like the subject, as he felt he was going against the current. It was common for young people to move from small towns to big cities in search of better jobs, partners, and greater opportunities. Moving in the opposite direction often led to misunderstandings. Many people had a hard time understanding his unconventional story. He felt the weight of their judgment, constantly questioning his decision, but deep down he knew what he wanted, even if others didn't understand. "Life is what?" "It's not quite clear," Emma said, her cheerful, puffy eyes full of bewilderment. "It's very simple," Thomas took a deep breath and continued. "I don't like the hustle and bustle and fighting for a place in the sun. I prefer to fish at dawn, sit by the fire at night, and wander the woods. I want to have the freedom to live life on my own terms, to enjoy the simplicity that life here offers. The big city, with its noise and competition, seems like a cage to me." "Wait a minute. Where did you get these wild tendencies?" "Mosquitoes and campfires don't fit into the concept of comfort and civilization." Emma looked at the young man. She herself had been born in a backwoods village with a few houses. Moving to a slightly larger village that used to be a district center seemed like a step forward to her. And here stood before her a man whose interests were completely opposite. Emma was intrigued, to say the least. In fact, Emma, a wise woman in her 40s, felt a bright spark of curiosity. Emma had absorbed the local culture of the place, where those who worked hard and succeeded were respected. Since the first path was almost unattainable for her due to lack of necessary education, she decided to climb her own version of Olympus with her own business. She worked tirelessly to carve out a niche for herself and provide for her family. And in fact, Thomas seemed like a good match for her daughter. He had urban roots, and if they used him as a springboard, they could celebrate a move to the regional center in a few years. A guy from an intellectual background was a promising possibility. She began to plan for the future, the idea of a food business maturing in her head. The possibilities seemed endless, and an entrepreneurial spirit was ignited in her. Only one thing bothered Emma. Thomas was quite a prominent figure, and it was obvious that he was attractive to many women. Emma could already foresee that he might go astray. She'd seen it before in her village, men who couldn't resist the lure of other women. "Nothing will happen under my watchful eye," she thought, and quickly mustered her irrepressible energy. Thomas liked Abigail. She was a sweet and quiet girl, the complete opposite of her parents. She had all the qualities of an excellent housewife and future mother, which was very valuable to the young man. Abigail's gentle nature brought peace to Thomas's sometimes turbulent mind. He appreciated her poise, warmth, and kindness. She embodied everything he needed in a partner, even if he didn't always openly display it. There was a lot of desire around Thomas, but Abigail stood out from the crowd of admirers. He saw her as a diamond among ordinary stones and knew this was his chance. He wasn't going to limit himself to intimacy, he just saw Abigail as a practical choice. Yet in the quiet moments they spent together, he often found himself genuinely admiring her qualities. Her innocence, her laughter, her unfailing support, all of it began to mean more to him than he had initially thought. Soon Thomas proposed, and Abigail immediately accepted. After a modest wedding, they began their happy married life. The ceremony was simple but full of love, with close friends and family gathered around. Abigail's eyes shone with happiness, and even Emma felt proud of her daughter. One day when Thomas was working in the meat pavilion, Abigail exclaimed, "I need a good piece of veal." Her eyes sparkled and her apron fluttered. "Just a minute," she said in a cheerful voice, and her optimism lit up the stage. Thomas couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. She brought light to his humdrum day, and he enjoyed these small interactions. It was through small moments like these that their life together made sense. The other woman, a redhead with bright freckles, stood off to the side. She wasn't prepared for the conversation to end so quickly. "Can I have another piece?" she asked. trying to prolong their exchange. Behind her, the brunette watched Thomas, her eyes fixed on his strong torso as he worked with precision. Thomas was well aware of the attention he was attracting from the women in the market. It was flattering, and he couldn't deny that in some ways he enjoyed it. It reminded him of his youth, of the days when he was carefree and the center of attention. Emma came out of the back room. She instantly assessed the situation, and a slight shock came over her. Thomas, sensing his mother-in-law's presence, stopped smiling and with a serious look put the veal roll on the scale. Situations like this happened quite often. He was used to the tension in their family, especially Emma's sensitive remarks. But Emma's protective nature, though sometimes overbearing, calmed him. She was fierce, and he knew she would do anything for her family. One day, however, the situation changed. Emma made it clear, albeit discreetly, that she wouldn't mind having an affair with a younger and stronger man. Thomas began to look at Emma with new eyes, the eyes of a connoisseur of women's charms. He realized that Emma was an attractive woman in her own way, with a warm smile and a confident gait. Her sharp mind and demeanor were qualities he was beginning to find intriguing. Once, unable to resist, he stepped close to her and playfully pinched her. Emma jumped with surprise, letting out a quiet shriek. "How clumsy!" she exclaimed, half amused, half surprised. Later that afternoon, when Abigail left for the wholesale market to pick up new merchandise, Thomas and Emma were alone in the store. Unspoken words hung in the air, and their gazes lingered for far too long. Their caresses were hot, and they couldn't get enough of each other. There was a sense of danger, of something forbidden, and it excited them both. When it was over, they cleaned themselves up, feeling a sense of satisfaction and guilt. "You're so strong and energetic," Emma said, adjusting her skirt. "You surprise me too," Thomas replied with a smile. They exchanged a knowing look that spoke of secrets and shared desires. Their relationship was becoming more complicated, and neither of them knew what the future held, but they were willing to sail through uncertain waters, at least for now.